The coat of many colors. Old Israel, still known as Jacob to his family, made much of Rachel's firstborn. Benjamin was still far too young to be a companion to him, especially since he did not even remember his own mother. And the 10 older brothers were rough and ready men who did many thoughtless and sometimes evil things without regret. Joseph, on the other hand, was a good and faithful boy, although a little too anxious to tell his father about the wrongdoings of his brothers. Jacob was so fond of the lad that he made for him a wonderful coat of many colors as a special token of his favor. The older brothers had no such fine robes to wear, and they muttered sourly among themselves. The very sight of the coat enraged them, for they saw it as a sign of Jacob's great love for the boy and his lesser love for them. In their jealousy, they hated Joseph so much that they could not even speak to him without being rude and angry. One night, when Joseph was about 17, he had a dream. And in the morning he told it to his brothers, little realizing how they would feel about it. "Listen to my dream," he said eagerly, quite sure that they would be as interested as he. "In this dream we were binding sheaves in the field, and all at once my sheaf stood upright in the center, and then all your sheaves stood round about and bowed down to my sheaf." "Ah, is that the way of it?" his brothers sneered, for they could sense the meaning of the dream. "Will you indeed reign over us, and we bow down to you? Do you really think that you will be our ruler?" And they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Yet when he dreamed another dream, he told that one of them too, and said, "I have dreamed again, and in my dream I saw the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowing down to me." This time, even his father showed a trace of anger and rebuked him. "What is this that you have dreamed?" he said. "Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed bow down to the earth before you, as if you were a king?" Yet Jacob thought about the dream and wondered if it could really mean that someday Joseph would be greater than all his family. The same thought came to the brothers, and it made their hate and envy grow. The pastures around the family home were not large enough to feed Jacob's growing flocks, and when the fields were grazed clean of grass, he would send his sons off to drive the animals as far away as they needed to find fresh pasturage and water. On one occasion, Jacob sent his 10 older sons to Shechem with the flocks, for he needed Joseph's help at home. And the men stayed away for such a long time that Jacob began to worry and wonder about their welfare. He called Joseph to him and said, "Your brothers are in Shechem with the flocks, and I wish to send you to them." "I am here to do as you say and will gladly go," said Joseph, although it was quite a distance for a young man to travel alone. "Go, then," said Jacob, "and see if all is well with your brothers and the flocks, and bring back news of them." Joseph put on his fine coat and set forth on his journey from the vale of Hebron, and he came at last to Shechem. But when he got there was no sign of his brothers or their flocks. A man of Shechem saw him wandering in the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" "I am looking for my brothers from Hebron," Joseph said. "Can you tell me where they might be feeding their flocks?" "Oh, they have left here," the man replied. "I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.' So at Dothan you should find them." So Joseph headed north through the hills toward Dothan with a message from his father. After many hours of hard travel, he could see the flocks with their shepherds, his brothers in the distance, and they themselves saw him coming from afar wearing the hated coat of many colors. At the sight of him and his fine clothes, their old dislike and envy burned within them. They watched him approach with his youthful, light-hearted step, and they began to plot against him. "Behold, here comes the dreamer," they said to one another. Let us kill him and cast him into some pit. And we can say to our father that some wild beast must have eaten him. Then we shall see what becomes of his dreams." But Reuben, the oldest of the brothers, had more mercy than the rest. "Let us not kill him ourselves," he said. "There is no need to shed his blood. Instead, let us throw him into this pit in the wilderness and leave him there, and lay no hand upon him." For Reuben wanted to save the boy from them, and planned to come back later to free him from the pit and return him to their father. Joseph came to them without any thought, but that they would welcome him and gladly give him a return message for their father in Hebron. To his great surprise, they seized him roughly and ripped off his coat of many colors and threw him into a pit. The pit was deep and empty, without even a drop of water in it to quench his thirst or attract other desert wanderers who might come in search of water. And there they let him stay and cry for help while they sat down on the nearby grass to eat. When they had finished their meal, some of the brothers went back to the pastures to care for the flocks, and Reuben went farther off than any of them to make his plans and wait for an opportunity to help his brother Joseph. The others stayed near the pit and talked. As they idled at the pit, they saw a caravan of merchants and their camels approaching across the wilderness. They knew the men to be Ishmaelites, those who were descended from Ishmael of the wild lands. And they were coming from Gilead with their camels laden with spices and balm and myrrh to take to the markets of Egypt. And brother Judah was struck with a new and interesting thought. "What profit is it to us if we kill our brother?" he said. "Would it not be better to sell him to these Ishmaelites for money? We should not let him die, for after all, he is our brother and our flesh." The others agreed to Judah's suggestion. In this way, they would be rid of Joseph at a profit to themselves. When the caravan of Ishmaelite merchantmen drew close enough so that the brothers could hail them to come closer yet, Judah and his brothers pulled the struggling Joseph from the pit and sold him to the merchants for 20 pieces of silver. The Ishmaelites took him willingly, for they knew they could easily sell a strong young man to some wealthy householder in Egypt for much more than he had cost them. And the Ishmaelites went off with him toward the land of Egypt. Shortly afterward, Reuben came back, hoping to find that his brothers were no longer near the pit so that he could rescue Joseph. His brothers were indeed out of sight, but when he looked into the pit, he saw that Joseph was no longer there. He stared down into the empty pit and called out hopelessly, but he could see that there would be no answer. The boy had gone, and he could not have climbed out by himself. Reuben tore his clothes with fright and grief. He ran into the pastures and cried out to his brothers, "The child has gone, and I, what shall I do? Where shall I go?" For as the oldest son, he felt the blame on his own shoulders, and he could not bear to think what he would have to tell his father. The brothers told him what they had done, and he listened in horror. There was no undoing it. Even Reuben could see that. So then they took the coat of many colors, which they had stripped from Joseph when he came to them, and killed one of the young goats of their flock. While Reuben looked on in shame, they dipped the lovely coat into the blood, and they took it back with them to their father in Hebron. They handed Jacob the once beautiful coat, now so horribly stained. "This we found in the wilderness," they said. "It is torn and bloodied, but we think we recognize it. See, Father? Do you know whether this is your son's coat?" Jacob took it from them and knew it at once. "It is my son's coat," he cried out bitterly. "Some wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt my son Joseph has been torn to pieces." And Jacob tore his clothes in the agony of his grief, and dressed himself in mourning sackcloth. All his family tried to comfort him, even those who had caused his terrible sorrow. But Jacob could not be comforted. Only little Benjamin could ease his pain. Yet he was not his brother, and could not make up for the loss of Joseph. Jacob's heart was broken. "I will go down into my grave mourning for my son," he moaned sorrowfully. Thus did Jacob mourn for his lost son. He had no reason to believe that his beloved Joseph had not been torn apart by some wild animal on his lonely journey. 10 brothers knew that no animal had taken him, but they dared not to say what they had done. In fact, they did not know what had become of the brother they had sold. Joseph was on a slave block in the land of Egypt.
Joseph's family in Egypt. The children and grandchildren of Israel who lived in Canaan numbered 66, and with them in their home were many workers of the fields. The food from Egypt was soon gone. The bare land could not feed them all, and all of them were hungry. When the time came that they had eaten up the corn from Egypt, they knew they had somehow to find more food or die. Jacob called his sons together. "You will have to go again," he said. "Go back to Egypt and buy more food for us." "We can only go if we take Benjamin," Judah reminded him. "The man who rules there told us that he would not see us again unless we take our youngest brother with us. If you let us take him, we will go. Otherwise there is no use in going." Jacob groaned bitterly, remembering. "Why did you tell the man you had another brother?" he asked reproachfully. "Because he asked us," Judah answered. "He asked about our family, and wanted to know if our father was still alive and if we had another brother. There seemed no reason not to answer him. How could we know that he would say, 'Bring your brother to me'? But we must go, my father. Send the lad with me, so that we may see the man and buy the food, or else all of us shall die of hunger, you, we, and all the little ones. I myself will be the guarantee for Benjamin. If I do not bring him back to you, then all blame shall be on me forever." They argued more, the brothers and the old man, and at last Jacob agreed to let them go with his beloved Benjamin. "If it must be so," he sighed, "then it must be. Take your brother and go, but do this too. Take with you the best fruits of the land. Carry a good present to the man, a little balm, some wild honey, rich spices and perfumes, nuts and almonds, the best of everything we have. And take double money with you also, so that you may pay for what you buy and return what you found in your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight that it was given back to you. Go now, and look after Benjamin, and may that man be kind. Pray that God Almighty will show you mercy before the man in Egypt, so that he will send back both Simeon and Benjamin. But if it is God's will that I should lose my children, then it is God's will." The brothers took the presents and the double money, and young Benjamin journeyed with them to the land of Egypt. Once again, 10 brothers stood before Joseph, ruler in a foreign land, but this time Rachel's younger son stood with them. When Joseph saw Benjamin, he was deeply moved. "Take the men from Canaan to my house," he told his steward, "and prepare a feast, for these men shall dine with me at noon." Joseph's servant led the brothers away, and the brothers were very much afraid when they saw they were being taken to the ruler's house, for they thought that some terrible punishment was in store for them. "It is because of the money put back in our sacks," they told each other. "He thinks we stole it, and now he will throw us into prison with Simeon, and we shall all be slaves." When they reached the door of Joseph's house, they could contain their fears no longer. "About the money in our sacks," they said to Joseph's steward, "we did not steal it. We do not know how it came to be put back in the sacks, but we have brought other money to replace it if you think we stole it." "Why, no," the steward said as he showed them into Joseph's home. "Peace be to you. Do not be afraid. It must have been your God that gave you treasure in your sacks. I received your money, and you owe us nothing." So saying, he left them and came back with Simeon. Then he made all of them comfortable in Joseph's house, washing their feet according to the custom, and providing fodder for their donkeys. "My master will be here at noon," he explained to Joseph's brothers, "and he has asked that you should eat with him." Joseph came home at noon and welcomed them kindly to his house. They bowed low in front of him, grateful for his kindness and for Simeon's release, and they gave him the presents they had brought from Canaan. Joseph accepted their gifts cordially and inquired about their welfare. "And is your father well?" he asked, with far more interest than they could know. "The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" "He is alive and well," they answered, bowing low again. Then Joseph looked at his brother Benjamin, son of Rachel, his own mother. "Is this your younger brother of whom you spoke to me?" They nodded. "That is he," they said. "God be gracious to you, my son," said Joseph, scarcely able to hide his powerful emotions, for he yearned to greet the youth and show his love. Yet he was not ready to reveal himself. Alone for a moment he wept, then washed away his tears and went back to his brothers. They all sat down to dine. Joseph, as ruler, had a table to himself, and his Egyptian officers sat apart. And the 11 men from Canaan sat at a table by themselves, marveling and wondering how Joseph could possibly have known their ages, for he had seated them himself in order, from the firstborn to the youngest. And Joseph sent dishes from his own royal table to his honored visitors, offering Benjamin 5 times as much as all the others. They dined and drank, and all were merry. The strange man who was ruler seemed to be their friend, and he had brought them all together again. Simeon was free, and Benjamin had not been taken in his place. All fears were forgotten. The brothers set forth again on the following morning, their hearts full of relief and their sacks full of the grain so badly needed by Jacob and his family. But again, they did not know that Joseph had given his steward special instructions that would put them to a further test. "Fill the men's sacks with food," Joseph had said, "as much as they can carry, and put each man's money back into his sack. But to the youngest one you shall not only return the corn money, but also take my silver drinking cup and put it into his sack." The steward did as Joseph had commanded him, and the brothers traveled cheerfully toward the land of Canaan. They had not gone far when Joseph gave his steward fresh instructions. "Hurry now," he said. "Go after those men, and when you overtake them, you must say, 'Why have you returned evil for good? You have stolen my Lord's drinking cup, and in this you have done evil.'" The steward hurried off. Soon he overtook the brothers, and he said to them what Joseph had commanded him to say. "We did steal a silver cup?" The brothers were shocked. "How can you say such a thing? God forbid that your servants should have stolen anything. Did we not bring back the money we found in our sacks when we last traveled up to Canaan? Is it likely that we should steal from your Lord's house either gold or silver? Search us if you like. If the cup is found with any of us, then let that man die, and the rest of us will be slaves to your Lord of Egypt." "I will look," said Joseph's steward, "and he with whom the cup is found shall be my servant, but only he. The rest of you shall not be blamed." The brothers took their sacks down from their donkeys and confidently opened them. They were very sure that the cup would not be found, for each man knew that he had not been the one who had taken it. The steward searched each sack, beginning with that of the oldest son, Reuben, and ending with the sack of Benjamin, the youngest. And there, in Benjamin's sack, the steward found the silver cup that he had put there himself. The brothers were astounded and dismayed. They tore their clothes in fear and sorrow, but they loaded up their donkeys once again and returned to the city where Joseph awaited them with a stern, accusing face. Joseph saw that they had all come back, not only Benjamin, but all of them. His heart rejoiced that the younger brother had not been abandoned. "What deed is this that you have done?" Joseph demanded, pretending in anger that he did not feel. "Did you think that I would not find you out?" And then Judah, the one who had been most responsible for selling Joseph into slavery, showed that he was a changed man indeed. He said, "What can we say to you? How shall we clear ourselves? We know not how the cup came into our brother's sack, but we do know that God has seen the sins of our younger years and is punishing us. If one of us is guilty, then all of us are guilty, and all of us shall be your slaves." God forbid that I should keep you all as slaves, Joseph replied. Only one of you is guilty. The man who took my silver cup shall be my slave, and only he. The rest of you shall go in peace to your father's land. Here was their opportunity to escape and leave Benjamin behind in slavery. But the brothers would not take their chance to go. Judah, once so hard of heart and selfish, came forward once again and spoke to Egypt's ruler. "Oh, my lord, let me speak, I beg you," he said, "and do not let your anger burn against us. You remember that you asked us once before about our father, and if we had another brother, and we answered you. Then you wanted us to bring our brother to you, but we knew it would break our father's heart if we did so. If our father loses Benjamin, he will die of sorrow. Yet all of us would have died of famine if we had not come to you again. So we came again to Egypt and brought with us our younger brother, as you said we must. And now, if we return without this lad, who is everything to Jacob since the loss of his son Joseph, our father will surely die of sorrow. My lord, I promised my father that no harm would come to Benjamin, that he would return in safety. Therefore, my lord, I pray you, let me stay here in his place to be your slave, and let my brothers take the lad home to his father, for I could not bear the sadness that would come upon my father if his beloved youngest son were taken from him." Now Joseph could not restrain himself, for he could see that his brothers were no longer the cruel men they had been. "I am your brother Joseph," he cried out. "Tell me again that my father is still alive." His brothers were thunderstruck and could not answer him. For the first time, this hard Egyptian ruler had spoken in their own language, and he had said this incredible thing. In their astonishment and fear, they hung back and said nothing. "Come near me, I beg you," Joseph said, and held his arms out to them. At last, and slowly, they went close to him. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt," this powerful ruler said, and now they shook and trembled. "Oh, but do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me. For it was God who sent me here ahead of you to save our people's lives. God brought me here and made me ruler throughout the land of Egypt. God, not you, so that you might be preserved upon this earth. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and there will be 5 years more without a harvest. Therefore, hurry to your home and speak to our father. Tell him, God has made your son Joseph lord of all Egypt. Tell him that he is to come at once with all his family and live near me in the part of Egypt called the land of Goshen. Say that he must bring his children and all his children's children and all his flocks and herds and everything he has, for I will look after all of you in this time of poverty. Make haste. Tell my father, and bring him here to me." And then Joseph took his brother Benjamin into his arms, and wept tears of joy after the many years of parting. Afterward he embraced his other brothers too, as proof that all had been forgiven, and that he loved them also. And then they talked together as they had never talked before. Pharaoh soon heard that Joseph's brothers had come, and he himself insisted that their father and all their family should come to live in Egypt, where there was food in plenty. 11 brothers, guilt-free and happy at last, took the rich gifts given to them by Pharaoh and his governor Joseph, and went back into the land of Canaan to tell the good news to their father. With the gifts they took provisions for their journey, and wagons from the king, so that they might bring back to Egypt all their family and their goods. When Jacob saw that not only Benjamin, but Simeon as well had come back with all the others, his relief and joy were great. But greater still was his happiness when they told him, "Joseph is alive! Your son is governor over the land of Egypt, and we have come to take you and all our family back with us to be near him." At first the old man could not believe his ears, and his heart was faint because of what he heard. But when they told him everything his son had said, he believed them and rejoiced. Yet he was not sure that God meant him to go into the land of Egypt, for Canaan was his promised land. Then the Lord God spoke to him and said, "I am God. the God of your fathers. Do not be afraid to go to Egypt, for I will be with you, and make of you a mighty nation. You shall see your son Joseph again, and in time I will bring your family out of Egypt back into the land of Canaan." Then Jacob, father of all the people whom the Egyptians called the Israelites, took his family into Egypt, and once again saw his beloved long-lost son. Joseph greeted him with tears of joy, and Pharaoh himself accepted the children of Israel as honored friends. Thus did the children of Israel settle in the land of Goshen, a rich and fertile district that was part of Egypt, and there they lived for many years. Pharaoh was kind to them, and the people of Egypt loved and respected the children of Israel because they were the family of Joseph, who had saved them all from famine and starvation. No more than 70 Israelites, including Joseph and his children, settled in the land of Goshen. But in time the family grew, became great in numbers, and prospered among their Egyptian friends. For several hundreds of years the children of Israel were happy in the alien land.